Remco, the funny guy. Hey, Remco.
Who's the funny guy?
You are. You heard me. This is Say Hi to the Broccoli Brothers and Sister.
Hi. Im Dezember waren wir in Amsterdam, um uns mit einem Urgestein aus der Cannabis-Szene zu treffen.
I remember when they brought in CBD and they were like, this is the greatest new thing. And I'm like, what? It doesn't get you high. People used to pass out in Amsterdam.
Alles begann auf dem 420 Beach Festival, wo wir die Seeds kennenlernten. Durch Caro von Seeds entstand der Kontakt zu Doug, einem der beiden Gründer von THSeeds.
So Germany was legal medically and now it's going recreational. That's just how it works. So all they can think of is the THC level. And so people that don't know better, that's what they look at. The THC and CBD are like the engine and the terpenes are like the steering wheel.
Doug führte uns gemeinsam mit den Seeds durch die Stadt auf der Spur von geschichtsträchtigen Orten der Cannabis-Szene von Amsterdam.
So we are here at Drogbak number 2, which was the headquarters of the CIA, which stood for cannabis in Amsterdam.
Im Headquarter von THSeeds und seiner Hanfklamottenfirma Hempworks gewährte Doug uns ein exklusives Interview.
My bed was here, and you open the window and there's your grow room, you know what I mean? And my kitchen was right next to it, and that was the only way to get to the backyard, right? And so one morning I get this like, and oh my God, it's the police. So what was that question?
How you started growing.
Oh, right. Oh, so let me go on with that. So don't x-ray your seeds. Put them in the dirt and grow them. With the advice from the Broccoli Brothers. That was some good coffee this morning. Yeah. Okay, so I grew up in California.
Yeah.
In Northern California, in fact. I was originally from Oakland, and then my family moved across the bay. And I think my brother had like grown something at home, but my real first major contact was a girl from Humboldt, came to our high school, and I used to drive my dad's Chevy Impala convertible sometimes to school, and we would go out to lunch. And she had some crazy purple bud from Humboldt, and we smoked it, and I'll never forget because we'd have to go to our locker, and we were like, oh God, we have to say goodbye to everyone. And you know, everyone's scrambling to go to 5th class, right? And so I got my books, and then I went into class, and I had the coolest math teacher, and he always said, as long as you do good, you can do whatever you want. You could sleep here, whatever. And I was so high, I passed out, and then I woke up, and I went to my car, and then I fell asleep in my car. And that day we were all going to go to Santa Cruz to go surfing. And all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. And my friends came to the car to wake me up because I had fallen asleep. The next day I found everyone's like, what happened to you? What happened to you? The math class was near the physical education, and you have a 10-minute bell. And at the 10-minute bell, I got up and walked out of class in front of everyone. But my teacher, because I was good at math, he didn't care. He didn't say anything the next day. So that was my first, felt what Humboldt weed was like. You know?
Was weed legal back then in California?
So the thing about California when I was growing up, it was kind of like, because you had the just say no to drugs thing, but weed in California, it was kind of like everywhere. You know, in fact, I remember when I first came to Amsterdam, you had people in Amsterdam that smoked, but as soon as you go outside of Amsterdam, it's not that much. And in California, almost every single friend of mine in college, we all had a bong. You couldn't go into a room in college without a bong. And so because weed was expensive for us, we all smoked out of bongs. Or we smoked Mexi weed joints, because that's always cheaper. So you get the bricked up bad Mexi weed.
Oh, Mexican.
Yeah, and we used to, and so it was really dry, and it had seeds and stems. And then we would take orange peels and put them in the baggie, and it'd give you a headache. But then when you got the hydro, so you knew a guy who grew indoor in the closet really good. And that's how the Californians got really good, because it was so illegal. They tended to be very good small indoor growers growing in a closet. Or you got Humboldt, Mendocino County weed that was coming down. And that was all over. I went to university in San Diego. If you walk around the beach in San Diego, all you smell is weed everywhere. Yeah. So it's more prevalent, I think, there than anywhere I've ever been. And so, yeah. And then what was strange was, but it was so illegal. There were laws in America where if you your house got busted and you had a gun, for example, they could seize your house. So the police were really on it. And imagine you lose your home. And so there was a book called Shattered Lives, and it was about the war on drugs and all the casualties of the war on drugs and what had happened to families, parents getting put into jail for just growing weed or whatever. And so when it first became legal medically, I couldn't believe it. I remember going to LA to a trade show, and it was just like, oh my God, what happened? And then what had happened to us was in Amsterdam, it was free, and so you had people from all over America coming, and that's how we got our original genetics, because I had some connections, but mostly people were coming and they were just so happy that we got everything from Northern California. We got the bubblegum from Indiana. So that was one of our first strains, and the hog actually it was from Tennessee, but it went to San Diego, then came to us. And so then we started building our genetics and breeding and crossing. And we had the first famous strains was like hog, bubblegum, and then sage and MK Ultra. So those were our old strains.
But I think it's really interesting that because you have a home base in America and you went to Europe, so you had access to both genetic pools, and that's fucking awesome.
Well, so what happened when we started and how we started was we started the CIA. We'll be talking about that later. And there was like the coffee shops were kind of like, Bob Marley poster. They weren't very nice. And so we got the job to do the High Times Cannabis Cup. And what we decided to do was open it to the public. So the seed company competition was very professional, and it was blind ballots. So you didn't know, it was just S1, indica, sativa, or mixed. And then we had the coffee shop competition where people could go to the coffee shops. And so we were kind of a cannabis information center. And that was the beginning of, I remember that year, the marijuana logo, that was 92, 93, was the #1 logo in the world. So Snoop Dogg had his album came out, the House of Pain had their album come out, Cypress Hill had their album came out, and they were all coming to Amsterdam. And they were all coming to our shop. And so it just like, boom, with that Cannabis Cup, it was like everything at once. And so that CIA place, when you walked up the stairs, we had a grow inside, like right by Central Station. And then we had a lounge area. We did what was called video bong hits. So you sat in this chair with a map of Amsterdam, and then you did a bong hit and we filmed it. So we have like Woody Harrelson, we have Snoop Dogg, all these famous people, and just anyone who came by doing video bong hits. And it became what was called the epicenter of the cannabis universe by like Rob Clark and Skunkman Sam. And so those guys were kind of like our mentors. Like they taught us about cannabis breeding, introduced us. I remember when they brought in CBD and they were like, this is the greatest new thing. And I'm like, what? It doesn't get you high. And they're like, it's going to be big. And no one would talk about it. This was back in like 93, 94. What? Yeah. And so they had already isolated CBD. They were like miles ahead of everyone else. Yeah. So that was kind of the beginning of it. Those are the early strains back then. We were lucky with our timing, and then because the name CIA was called Cannabis in Amsterdam. So we're kind of a cannabis information center, and that's when we started THSeeds, and we also started the hemp company. So then it was kind of this funky place, and then we opened the shop Hempworks, which is on the main shopping street. So there we had the Hempworks, Hoodlum Jackets, and the THSeeds, which we were there for, I think, 25 years in the center.
Why did you come to Amsterdam? Why did you decide to move out of America?
Yeah. So I went to university as a real estate finance major. Why? Because I thought you would make money out of college. So but I also was taking ceramics all the way through to advanced ceramics. That's what's nice about American universities. You can take a diverse and what was funny was my my first year in business school, we had appraisal. And the guy was working in Arizona, and he said, when you guys graduate, you guys are all fucked. There's going to be no jobs. And exactly the year I graduated, the saving and loan crisis happened. This is the crisis before the crisis you guys know about. Way back when, in 92. So I literally, like, I went from, like, you know, I paid my way through school working in a nice restaurant and smoking a lot of pot. But I still was able to do university and finish. But then there was absolutely no work in that field. And so when the Olympics came up, I had a friend living in Barcelona, and he's like, you could get a job with NBC, the television company. So then I worked at the Olympics in Barcelona, and then I went to Austria. I was a chef in Austria. And then my friend said, hey, I got the job to do the High Times Cannabis Cup. And I had gotten the job to be a snowboard instructor the next year. But I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'd never been to Amsterdam. So I came to Amsterdam, and then we, like, went around to all the coffee shops and we're like, hey, do you want to be involved in this crazy new thing? You know, and that year, I think maybe 900 people came, but it was like, boom, it just got so much publicity, and High Times was at its peak at that time. And the way we structured it was, I think, the best way, because the public could do the popularity contest, and then the seed companies were judged by celebrity judges, but it was blind. And that's one of the keys to the whole thing.
Because in my opinion, cups nowadays are just marketing. It's just marketing stuff.
A lot of people complain. So what High Times did was I never forget, because we were counting the ballots, and Gabriel Gotworth was an old American politician who was pro-hemp and weed, and he was helping me count the ballots, and it was really difficult. Now, in the past, it was just the seed companies. And the guy from High Times was like, what are you doing? The show's about to start. Forget that. You're ruining our cup with this public one. But we had a lot of ballots to count. And I'm like, no, I'm finishing this. So he wanted us to forget about the coffee shop thing. But because the public could go to it, it was the most popular thing. That's when Arian won with the greenhouse.
Even I am a big fan of the Cannabis Cup. Yeah, I watched it so many years back.
The greenhouse became famous, but that year, of all the weed, there was only Dutch Passion, Positronics, and Sensi Seed, and I think Nirvana. And Sensi Seed won both first and second place in every category. Damn. The NL5 Haze was just amazing. Like, it just totally blew away everything.
Is it the Neville's Haze?
Yeah, that was the Neville's Haze. So it's the NL5 Haze. If you can find those original seeds, even the Piff Haze that's famous now is actually a phenotype of the NL5 Haze. That pack of seeds is worth, you can't find it. Yeah, you can't find it anymore.
That's an issue that in Amsterdam, I think, a lot of old, really good genetics are lost.
Well, I'll show you a bag of seeds that I have from Skunkman Sam, and it must be about 30,000 seeds. So how it all started, like most of the companies started from skunk. Everything has skunk in it. If you look at the Galaxy, everything has skunk in it. Why? Because he had the medical license to make seeds, and you would give him a plant, he would put it in quarantine, and then he would use the skunk male to make the seeds for everyone, basically. The first big seed companies all were, so the first sage was sage crossed with skunk. The first MK Ultra that people could buy was MK. And that's what people don't talk about, the reality, but that's what it is. And that's the same with the other strains. So for example, the La Sage is actually a phenotype of sage with the skunk male. I call it La Sage because the breeder who came to me and showed me this weed at the Cannabis Cup many years later was French. So he's our breeder today, also Julian. And so that's why it's called, everyone thinks it's LA Sage. That's not the story. Yeah, everyone thinks that, but actually it's because he's French. So I thought, La Sage. So basically it's a phenotype of the Skunkman Sam male crossed with our sage female. So that's what La Sage is.
Is there a way on how to select good males? Because I'm not that deep into breeding. Yeah. I know a lot of grow stuff, but not into breeding. And in my opinion, it's easy to select a female. You want something with good terps, high THC, low CBD maybe. But how can you determine if a male is good? Because there's no way to test it.
So what's important is only the good breeders have males. Yeah. because everyone's afraid of them for good reason, right? Yeah. And one of the reasons that a lot of the strains, when they first came out, feminized, everyone had problems with it. It's like, imagine at the beginning, it was all regular seeds, right? So then you can choose a pheno. And that's why something like you can find Lesage from Sage. You could find something new of MK from those strains because it's like having kids. They're going to have your genes, but they're also going to be different, right? So now you're trying to select the one that's the best. Now, a lot of the good weed that is kind of a freak. So a lot of the good weed are like OG Kush, I think MOB, cookies. A lot of these strains often were weed that was sent from Northern California to, say, New York or something, and halfway on the way, the people like in Colorado with OG were like, oh my God, look at this. And it's got some hermaphroditic tendencies. And so it has seeds. So that's why when a strain often first comes out, it's very difficult and it's very hermaphroditic. And you can't just all of a sudden take that plant that's already got hermaphroditic tendencies and cross it with itself. It's like a brother and sister having kids, right? So it's not the best thing. So I'm actually not the breeder. So the original strains was Adam, who lives in Colorado still. And so he breeds those strains. And then Julian is our breeder. He's French, but he's in Spain. And but we still have the connections from California. So we work with, like, for example, Symbiotic and other people. And so there's a like kind of a clique, you know, of guys who we don't give each other cuts, we give each other seeds, and we make selections, and then we do collaborations. And that's like the insider, like the best growers and the best breeders, that's how they work. So it's, yeah, like what you said, not many people keep males. And that takes years and years. So for example, Julian and Adam, they probably spend 3/4 of their lives just with the plants every day. You know, so that's like, it takes that much time. So right now we're doing a lot of medical cannabis in Switzerland and Greece. We did it in Macedonia. And we're getting crazy results. This is the Swiss analysis where we have the banana crushed is 30%, strawberry glue 35%, stracciatella 30.5%. And so in order to get that, it takes, we normally do 100 seeds, regular seeds, and it's a male that's super strong that we know that we don't sell to the general public. Then we obviously kill the males and then select the best so that we narrow it down to, say, 20 plants or 10, depending on how they look. Then we test those and then we pick the best ones. And then so generally we'll take the 2 best mommies, and then those 2 best mommies become the moms to make production runs because with medical cannabis, you need very even, perfect conditions and production. And so medical cannabis has kind of been our original roots. When we first started the CIA and we were there, we had the strain SAGE, which is an acronym for Sativa Afghanica Genetic Equilibrium. So even though it tastes like a pure sativa, it still has the Afghani in it, which is very hidden. And that is what allows it to produce a lot. So that's what you want in breeding, is you want certain characteristics for the flavor, for the effect, and then also you need for good production. You know, so it's hard to take a pure haze and actually produce it, right? So something like Sage is good because it has the best of both worlds. So how we got our first start in the medical world was Brownie Mary, who was she was helping AIDS patients in San Francisco with Dennis Perrone. And so they're basically the ones who got medical cannabis. And the reason we're all sitting here right today with medical and with recreational weed in Germany all started from there, from San Francisco. And the fact that the AIDS patients were given horrible chemical drugs that just made them nauseous. And so she was making brownies to give them an appetite, because if you're nauseous and you're not eating, your body can't rejuvenate itself.
I did the same with my grandma. My grandma had cancer. She died last year. But last couple of years, I always made her cookies because of the chemotherapy and all of the drugs. Yeah. She didn't eat anything. I haven't seen her laughing in years till I gave her a cookie. She had a smile on her face. Everything tasted good again, because before she said everything tastes like ash. Yeah. and afterwards everything was fine again.
And so what she did was she sent over buyers to the CIA to buy sage and sage and sour seeds because she knew that as a sativa, it's not going to couch lock you because these people had lives and she didn't want to give them a heavy indica where they get the munchies and then they sit on the couch. So that's why the sativas are very good for appetite without going to sleep. And so that was our first intro into the medical world was all the way back in 93 with Brownie Mary, you know? And then that's when San Francisco was the first place to have legal medical cannabis. And then it went to California, then it went to Colorado, then medical came, to Canada, and now Germany recreational. This is like, this totally reminds me of, I don't know how long ago when it happened in California, now it's happening in Germany. I'm like, wow. And so we're going to be opening a recreational, it's more of a dispensary model with members in Berlin. So I'm just now, actually, I have the drawings right here where I'm designing the grow. Yeah. So I'm trying to make it similar to medical because we do medical facilities, which are GACP, GMP, EU regulated in all these countries like Switzerland and Greece. So like this is in Greece. And this is the medical facility there. Then Switzerland, this is the results from the facility there in Switzerland. It's amazing.
How do you achieve that high THC content? Do you stress the plants during?
No. It's just, we also use Athena nutrients. We use cocos. So we know, so I always liken it to this. Imagine you want to make the fastest runner in the world, right? You take Usain Bolt, and then you take the fastest women in the world. They have kids, and then you let them race. You win. So now you're going to get the best. So that's basically it. So we know from so many years certain strains that score high THC. We know certain males that will score high THC, which is what's really important with medical. And but then there's other strains. What I'll have to say that's really funny about that is that it's not just the THC. The entourage effect is really important. And I really hope that people become more interested in that because I'll give you an example. I first got the MOB from my friend from Boston. Mother of berries, there's another term for it, but I don't want to say, I'll say it. But don't repeat this. It really means money over bitches because it's a big producer. It's a heavy indica. Let's just call it mother of berries, right? Because it does have a very berry flavor, right? And I grew it on my roof in Amsterdam, which is not the easiest thing to do, but I had a little overhang so if you're growing outdoor, by the way, and you're in Germany, what I advise is that you water the plant, don't let nature, because it tends to get overwatered. Unless you have a huge field and you have a big area, if you're growing small in a pot, I prefer to water it myself. And then, so I put a plexiglass over it. Or even better is if you have like an outdoor situation where it's on the side of the house, but then you have to keep it out of the lights around there also. So I was lucky because I was like on the top floor in Amsterdam. And then I do something where I black it out for 36 hours in August. And that tends to trigger the flowering. So, and if you're religious, so for example, my girlfriend and I, we have an apartment in Tenerife where you can grow all year. So what we do during the flower period is we just take a blanket, and every night at 8 o'clock, we put the blanket over it, and 8 o'clock in the morning, we take it off. And then you get like triple the production if you can do that. This is what they do in Northern California with the hoops. A lot of what you get NorCal weed and you think it's indoor, it's actually outdoor. And what they have is so we used to do consulting up there also and getting genetics up to the hills in Humboldt and Mendocino. They have these beds of dirt. I can show you some pictures of this too. And you just drive up with trucks, and then there's like, ooh, oh my God, and they just have PVC pipes. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, they open it up. And then at 8 o'clock at night, like a religion though. And I try to tell people this, and no one really does it, but in NorCal, that's what they do. So they get 3 crops a year. So you can theoretically do that, and you don't have to use autoflower seeds then. And what they do up there in the mountain is they dig a big hole in the dirt, and then when it rains, they fill it up, and then they have these giant black, if you go up to like Willits and all these towns and you drive through them, you just see these giant water tanks, black, just on the side of the road, and people selling turkey bags. It's crazy up there. And so then they put these things in, they make their mix, and then they use the water it's like a well that they made, and that's how they water the plants. And they do have lights too, so that at the beginning, or if it's like a cloudy day or in the morning, that'll wake up the plants. But they're religious about that 12-hour. So if you're growing outdoor in Germany, which is going to be the hugest season ever coming up, so you want to do it right with THCs, with Mon Chéri, which you buy from Seed Sisters. We have lots of nice strains for outdoor. And that's one of the good ways. Oh, I got to get back to the what I was talking about, the THC levels. So the MOB was a great plant to grow in Amsterdam because it's so fast. So if you want the fastest, shortest plant, it's MOB. It would finish, it just look like sage would be like this, which doesn't get moldy, which is nice. So you can go way into like November, but the MOB is done like this. So anyways, I got big production out of it. And Julian, who's a heavy smoker, way more than me, he came over to the house, and it was during the Cannabis Cup. And we're smoking this MOB. So we had to go do a lot of things in town or whatever, because we turned in weed. We had to go to all the events. And so we'd walk downstairs, after breakfast and everything to go out for the day. Oh, fuck, I forgot the keys to the car. Go back up. Walk downstairs again. I forgot my wallet. So this MOB makes you so stupid, right? So we called it Stupid Bud, right? And so we entered it in the cup, and one of those is the Arun Cup. I think we won second place with MOB, or Indica, the first time we entered it in. And then we tested it because Canna always has this professional testing on site at the Cannabis. So I turned in a bud. I think it's going to have high THCs, 15.5% THC. Something must be wrong here. Turn in another bud. The highest we've ever gotten with that strain is 16%.
But it's not all just about the THC. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the entourage effect. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where you have to, or you have another strain that has a really nice effect like Skittles, but it doesn't have high THC.
I think the high Skittles I've ever seen was 22% or so.
Yeah. So it's very, there's a lot of nuances. And another nuance I would like to say, because there's going to be a lot of people coming into this smoking world. And one thing I always advise is don't take a new person and give them a heavy bong hit of the hardest weed. And a lot of people, people used to pass out in Amsterdam. If you take really gnarly hash and you take it too big of a bong.
When we started dabbing.
Boom, people are falling down all over the place. So basically, if generally indicas, the younger people like them, and sativas, or people like me or older, we like the sativas. There's one caveat to that, which is that if people are hyperactive, they tend to not react well with sativas in general, like 9 times out of 10. So then, because they're already hyperactive, if they smoke a sativa, it gets their mind going. So they need the indica. Someone like me in an indica, I love the smell, the flavor. Man, I go to sleep. You know what I mean? I'm always sativa man, That's all I like to smoke is sage, strawberry glue. Our sativas I love. And I appreciate the indicas, especially for production wise. But so that's what it's important. And the other thing is about edibles. So when edibles first came on the scene in a recreational way in California and in Colorado, they are having the most problems because it's presented as an easy way to take cannabis, but it's not. It goes through your liver. And so what happens is it just knocks people out. So people are going to the emergency room.
Yeah, you don't have a tolerance because it's not THC, or the THC that doesn't get absorbed by your body in the normal way. Like you said, it's through liver, so you don't have any tolerance if you don't eat edibles. Yeah.
A medical patient in California. And so I eat a little bit of her chocolate and I go to bed, man. And so that's the most amount of emergency room visits in Colorado are from people eating edibles. So when I heard about the regulations in Germany, I was really stoked because our edibles are not legal. Good. And BHO is not legal also. Yeah, so we can make rosin, you can make isolator hash, which is way better. Yeah. So it's more natural. So I was really stoked when I heard about those regulations. I was like, okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? Because with the thing about edibles is it's really good medicine, you know?
Yeah, but it's so hard to find the right dosage.
Exactly. And so, but they present it, or a lot of people were presenting it as, oh, you see, and it's, what's funny is the medical world, and we're lucky that medical you can actually smoke. Because in the medical world, they're like, no, because it's not perfect. Like in the pharmaceutical world, you have to have a pill that's exactly this. That's why medical cannabis is always isolate. It's never full spectrum. But you can smoke full spectrum. Yeah. So it's much better. Yes.
Something about the THC rate of the MOB.
Yes.
Because I find it interesting that in cannabis, a higher THC amount means better quality. But I don't understand why. I don't drink alcohol anymore, but back then when I used to drink, I didn't buy the alcohol with the highest alcohol level. I bought the stuff that tasted good. Yeah. And I think it's the same with cannabis, or should be the same with cannabis. In my bubble, everybody wants to have the highest THC weed as possible. And I think I want the best tasting one, and the one with the best effects.
Well, what it is that the doctors, so medical is how everything starts to become legal. So Germany was legal medically, and now it's going recreational. That's just how it works all over the world. So when it happens, and you've got a doctor who's not very, they don't really know about weed. So all they can think of is the THC level. And so people that don't know better, that's what they look at. So it is a very important sign, but it's just one of many. There's a good saying, some author said, that THC and CBD are like the engine and the terpenes are like the steering wheel. So it's very important to be able to drive your car too. You have a big engine, you just go straight and fast. So that was one question, huh? And I rambled on. Yeah.
So the next question would be, how did you get into growing?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So when I grew up in California, when I was in college, I had a lot of friends who were growing in their closets. I would help them a little bit. And then when I first moved to Amsterdam, my first apartment, my partner Adam and Mojave, he also works with Rob Clark, and they have a company, and he makes the Zeta stage. He's a very technically good grower. I had a little tiny apartment with a backyard, but it was tiny, and it was like a little area with my neighbor was right above me. He was Jamaican, which was cool. And so I put my grow out there. And then it got really cold, of course, because it's Amsterdam. And so then Mo came and helped me, and we made like boxes with sand, and we put heating elements in it. And then I grew the first sage seeds there. So the first sage seeds ever made were in my little backyard. And I'll never forget, because I'd got the apartment from some guy who hadn't paid his student loans or something. And so one day, and I had literally, like, my bed was here, and you open the window and there's your grow room, you know what I mean? And my kitchen was right next to it. And that was the only way to get to the backyard, right? And so one morning I get this like, and oh my God, it's the police and what's called here the Deurwaarder, which is like the guys that come and they take notes of everything in your house. And my room, it smelled like weed. And so I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? I had to let them in. But if they go into the kitchen, they might want to look outside. So I was like, oh yeah, this model of it was all shitty equipment. Like, this is a refrigerator, this little thing. And this is the model. And he's like, wow, it smells like weed. I go, yeah, I'm from California. I moved to Amsterdam. What do you think? I was just smoking before you guys got here. And thank God they left, and it was saved. So that was my first grow, but I was more running the business than doing and so when the grows in Amsterdam was crazy, because this is like probably the worst city to grow in, because the buildings are old, the electric is old. So if you're on the top floor, you don't have to worry about the smell as much, but you can do water damage. Yeah. If you're on the bottom floor, you don't have to worry about water damage, but it could be actually water from down below. It happens a lot. But you have to worry about the smell more. If you're in the middle, you're fucked. Yeah. it's not like in Germany you find a lot of good grows because the buildings are a lot better. So I mean, we used to have little grows all over the place, and most people don't understand about Holland is that it's tolerated, it's not legal. The coffee shop experiment, which we were also involved in, we were consulting with the Wageningen University, the agricultural department. That's the first really legal thing. So the coffee shops are semi-legal. It's a gray area, but the growing of it's not. So and no one knows that. You're like, no one knows that. So what's nice now is what's happened in Germany and now with this coffee shop experiment is that it's 100% a legal thing. So then you have lines. It's like I always say, Germany is much like America, where we have like legal or illegal. There's a line and you can't cross it. Whereas Holland is more gray areas. No, in Germany, okay,
They just a couple of weeks ago they raided a pharmacy in Munich because they made rosin.
Right.
And the Munich state attorney, she said rosin is illegal because you need solvents for it to produce it. Well, but rosin is solventless. That's the point. Yeah. But she said the water you use to wash off the trichomes is
what you have there, though, which is good because it's similar to America. So in America, you had California, Colorado, Oregon, and then other states. And some states that are super conservative don't. So I imagine Munich is more conservative. Yeah. So, well, that's why I say it is more similar than you think. Yeah. So what was that question?
How you started growing.
Oh, right. Oh, so let me go on with that. So then the growing is done. When Adam went to Colorado, then I met Julian so how that happened was the guy working for me, Massimo, Italian guy, is like, oh my God, you got to see this sage. And it was like perfect. And so I was like, oh, wow, this French guy's got this amazing sage. I said, look, let's enter this into the next competition. The first competition was the Bio Cup, which was judged by Howard Marks, Mr. Nice, Shanti Baba, and Carl Hayes, right? And it all had to be bio, but this guy grew bio. And sure enough, we won first place. So then we entered the next competition. We won first place. And so I was like, okay, this guy's the man. So then, so Julian's been doing our breeding, and and he does a lot of traveling to California. And so we've been, so we were the first to really stabilize, for example, the gelato. So we have our French macaron is the gelato 33 across the French cookies and the French cookies. So all of the feminized gelatos and cookies at the time was just a mess. And he's really good at stabilizing them. And that's how we got those strains. And those were the new generation. Yeah. Of I call it the dessert generation. So you had the Kush generation, which the Bubblegum was the only one that's kind of the dessert from a long time ago. Then you had the Kush generation, which we had the MK Ultra. We won the Cannabis with the Underdog, which is like the strongest Kush you've ever smoking. But it was kind of the beginning of the cookie gelato era. And so that's what we did then was these strains, which was stabilizing them and crossing them. And that's what he does. And so now you can see we have all sorts of crosses. The new one we have is the Mon Chéri. Like I said, we have Runts Mataz. We're coming out with another Runts cross, the Mona Lisa. Okay, so since we were talking about the CIA, I will give you a little bit of funny stuff. So for example, we were in New York Times Magazine featured. It's an old picture. Yeah, in the 90s, yes. So that was crazy at the time. And we turned Woody Harrelson on to hemp, and he did a video bong hit at our shop. So he came it was the opening of Natural Born Killers in Amsterdam, and all of a sudden this girl had been into the shop buying stuff, and she's like, and then we got a phone call that Woody wants to come to the shop after hours. Of course we did. So we sold him the first hemp jeans he ever had. And he did his video bong hit. And then he was late for the opening of Natural Born Killers. And some other funny stories about the CIA. Where is it? Here. So this was what always saved us whenever the police came. because we said that our plants were props. So this was a TV show, and this is the TV studio, and it was based in the Jordan, and it was like a father and son comedy, and they had a laundromat. And then all of a sudden the son decided to have hemp plants. And so we had all these old mother plants. We're like, what are we going to do with them? Okay, we're going to bring them this. And so we had a certificate or a letter from them that they needed our plants for the TV show. And what was funny about it is we dropped off the plants there. We had to rent a van. And then when we went to go pick them up, there was all the police were there because the police were part of the TV show because they got busted in their laundromat in the Jordan. And we're like, oh, fuck, we have to grab all these giant fucking weed plants, put them in the van, right? And so we filled up the van and all the cops were just like, okay, we're going to let these guys go because, hey, we got this, right? And so then we're driving and then Adam's like, man, these are the old moms and they're just like, they look Dr. Seuss, like they were like, you get a bunch because you've been taking so many cuttings. And we had cuttings of them already to make new moms. So he's like, I don't really want to keep them. What are we going to do? And we're like, and the Heineken brewery was closed then. It's the museum brewery, whatever, right there on the main street. And so we're like, you know what? Fuck it. So we put it all in front of the Heineken brewery at night, right? And so I was just thinking like the next morning, like people come to Amsterdam, dude, you should see the Heineken brewery, man. They got weed plants in front. We didn't have cell phones there, so we didn't get a picture of it, but it was pretty funny, yeah. So anyways, the strains that we started with and the kind of our marketing was funny. This was the Dark Star. This strain, we knocked out 3 people at 1 cannabis cup. Like literally they took a bong hit and these were experienced smokers. We'd ask them, this is Dark Star, it's strong. Boom, they fell down. Boom, they fell down. And the other one fell down. So this is the strongest plant you've, and this one tests up to 21% THC. So then we were also doing the hemp, which is like, we always had funny marketing, make hemp, not war, and drop seeds, not bombs. That's always been our logo or our saying. And then like, here's our MK Ultra. And then Snoop Dogg also came to our shop often. And Flavor Flav and Cypress Hill, all sorts of people. So it was kind of like the right place at the right time.
Crazy. Just living the dream.
Getting high. So MK Ultra was the first Kush to be available on the market. So at the time, the strains were like Super Skunk, Northern Lights. Like I said, NL5 Haze from Sensi was really good. But besides, and that wasn't really in the coffee shop so much. There were some strains, but Kush was the OG Kush from LA. And that Adam breeded with, I think, the first seeds would have been Skunkman Sam's skunk. So that would be the OG Kush skunk was the original MK, but it was a selection from Adam. So that was the first Kush to hit the market. So it was like the most wanted crazy strain. And people, and what's funny about the MK is I went to a dispensary in Santa Cruz in California and they still had MK. And I'll talk to guys that are like, in the like medical, like we're trading seeds or something, and they'll be like, oh, I went to agricultural school and I still got the MK, bro. I'm like, no way, So yeah, it's the original OG. Those older strains, people tend to not really be growing them. I'll tell you something about the seeds though, while I'm on the subject. If you do it right, so I have some old Skunkman Sam seeds, which I just found because we have a lot of fridges with seeds. So I found like, oh my God, there's like 30,000 seeds of like Afghani skunk, cross Thai, whatever. And I thought, oh, fuck. I didn't even realize it was like in the back of the fridge because we have so many seeds over the years. And I did a germination test with them. So we always do germination tests periodically, right? And it 100%. What? And these were from 97.
What?
Yes. So that's strong genetics. It's grown well and stored well. So when you're storing seeds, make sure that they're in like a Ziploc baggie or something. And then I put it in like a Tupperware and in the fridge, but not near like the freezer. And if you can make it dark, you make it dark, but they last a long time.
It's funny that you said that because we've had a call with Athena a couple of days ago. and they told us how to use Athena, and they showed us everything. Yeah, and he told us that he spent like $6,000 on seeds and only 30% germination rate.
Did he send them through across? So sometimes the flight, yeah. So sometimes the either they're bad and they have bad germination. So I always akin it to like when you're making seeds is like, let's say you have a cat and she has 20 kittens as opposed to 6 kittens.
Yeah.
So those kittens are going to get better. So people will tend to over-pollinate the plants and then the seeds are fighting. So you don't want to over-pollinate. And the other thing is that sometimes on the flight, they can get ruined, or customs will X-ray them or something, and that can ruin them also. Yeah.
It can ruin them as well.
Yeah. Oh, X-ray. Yeah. Yeah. So they can do that. Like also, if they're mad that they have to give the seeds up because technically they're legal for some reason, but it's like the person says, well, it's for food or it's for, but they know better, so they'll X-ray them, and so the germination will be 0. Yeah. So don't X-ray your seeds. Put them in the dirt and grow them. With the advice from the Broccoli brothers. So it's funny, the legality of seeds is they are legal. It's an EU law, which is funny because Germany was the only country where it's how it's illegal, I don't know. It was illegal. But it is legal to send seeds throughout Europe. So, but the tax on it changed from because everyone was calling it agriculture, so then it was in the lower tax bracket, and then that changed. So now it's more of like a souvenir, and that puts it in the higher tax bracket. But whatever, I mean, that's life. You know, really it's agriculture, but if you sell it as agriculture, you're admitting that it's, you know, yeah. Exactly. So I think now in Germany, though, this is not an issue anymore.
No, it's not an issue.
Which is hallelujah.
What are currently your own favorite genetics from THSeeds?
Ooh, okay. So I'm old school.
Yep.
So of course, Sage and La Sage and Sage and Sour are just, that's like, if someone grew it good, that's what I want to smoke constantly. I mean, I love the new strains for growing, for smelling, for looking at it. But then it's like great if it's right before bed, because most of these indicas you young kids like, man, boom. And I'm like, I'm asleep, you know? So I tend to like to smoke and still be awake, you know? So then I'm just a sativa lover. But do the young kids like? Yeah, they're liking the Mona Lisa, the London Mint Cake, the new Mon Cherie. They always want the new fruity, the pure Runcie. They were at the Mary Jane in Berlin. This guy had the most advanced on-site testing machine because they had a different machine before. We used to test it with the machine, and then we tested it in a lab, and they're always like this. So when they tested everyone's weed, everything was coming out like 19, 20, everything, and ours came out, I think, 28%, the pure Runcie. Was that, like, no one was even, I think the next highest was 22%. And ours was like 28. And our next one was 26. We had, I think it was the Beastie. Yeah. So we always win that award. In fact, at the High Times Cannabis Cup, when the first year that they did testing, the Sage at the time was 21%, which was the highest. What's funny is it became very commercial and hard to win, you know. So we won a few times, but some years it depended on who the judges were, you know. Like one year they said, it's the Women's Cup, which would have been fine if they found women that really were smokers, but the judges were not smokers. They just found any woman. And I'm like, well, and so all the weak weed won that year. You know, so every year has its own story and background, right? And but what we always won was the hash every year. And so I'll tell you that we basically, I think, was probably the first ever rosin, because what we did was isolator hash and pollinator hash had just come out, right? And so we would run the first run of pollinator hash. We didn't run it that long. A lot of people ran it too long. That's not that good. So anyways, what Adam did was we had a laminating machine. And so we would take Mylar and the plastic, and we'd make like passes. And then we'd run it through the Mylar machine. So you had the heat and the press, and it'd come out like a fruit roll. And this is what we were always entering in the Cannabis Cup. And no one cared about the hash category then. We won the hash category every year. And it was always like they would, it wasn't a cannabis cup. It was like a little stupid thing. And it was always at the beginning and no one was listening. But we were like, man, we made the best hash. But these laminates became very famous because everyone from New York, and especially High Times was from New York, they would use these and smuggle them because it was like a pass to one of our parties. So we used to always have a party and a fashion show or whatever. And so we would run this laminating hash and it was flat, but you couldn't see it. And then you'd cut it open and it was like a fruit roll. And so anyways, these would end up at parties in New York and they were like gold there. Yeah. So I think that might have been the first rosin.
Stuff like rosin full melt mix.
It was, we didn't use parched paper, which is, I said that to Adam. I said, I think you invented rosin. But we used that, the Mylar, which stuck. It wasn't as easy. The parched paper.
I used the Mylar for my first Piatella experiments at home, but everything sticks to it.
Yeah, it's not as good as the parched paper. But at the time, it was an innovation, right?
What is your next project? What are you looking forward to?
We're working in Greece with a company making medical cannabis, which is going to be available in Germany likely, and then also in the medical market. In Switzerland, the 4 strains, which is stracciatella, strawberry glue, banana crushed, and one other I can't remember. Anyways, those are all going to be available medical in Germany, Swiss made. My last name is Swiss, Mignola. So I'm like, wow, this is great. And I'll tell you, the work they do there, it's called MetaMount. It is like so tight and it's so nice to work with them because everything is done perfect. They follow the instructions. So we've been working with them for almost 2 years now. So that's if you are a medical patient, it will be available. But what's really exciting is finally the recreational. So we have new partners that came to us. And we were there at the 420 party in front of the Bundes. And so what we're doing is our first dispensary is going to be in Berlin, of course.
Yeah,
So
we will visit you.
That's why we came
We'll
up
be
with
there.
this. Oh, there we go. So what I told these guys is I said, listen, I go, the dispensary is, because it's not a coffee shop, it's not important. What's important is the grow. So what we're going to do with the grow is similar to the to our medical experience on how to grow weed with all the same protocols is how we're going to do the recreational. So we're going to make it like a medical facility, but for recreational. So it takes a lot of teaching the members exactly how to grow and making sure that it's completely clean. We're going to use Athena. We're going to use U-Grow Cocos. We're going to use sunlight. We're going to use Dutch lighting innovation, UV light. We're going to use UV light on the water coming in. Control this situation. We're going to rotate the crops. So we'll have 4 flower rooms. If most people, what they want to do, because they want to make money right away, is they make a huge crop and then they have to manicure and do everything at once. Yeah. And then you're stuck because you're never going to do the best work. I mean, I always liken it to like making a fine wine, And you could make the greatest grapes in the world, but if you don't bottle it correct and cure it correctly, you're going to mess up your weed.
That's so hard to see people putting in so much work and love over 2 or 3 or 4 months. Yes. And then they screw up the curing. I can give a good
example. At the Wageningen University, the head of agriculture there, we were helping him out for this coffee shop experiment. Great guy. And he was, what I liked about him is sometimes agricultural people, they look at weed people as like, eh. He was like at the end, I said, listen, you need to flush it. No more nutrients at the last week or 2. We always do 3 weeks or 2 weeks. And the tomato grower, the biggest tomato grower in Holland, was like, why? It doesn't make sense. Because technically it doesn't make sense. And I said, listen, you get a headache and it tastes horrible. And he just said, that's it. We're going with Douglas's advice, THSeeds. We're going to do it that way. Then he was like, I don't get it. You have all these great THC levels and I'm testing the weed and I'm not getting more than like 14, 15%. And I saw that he was growing amazing, right? And then once he got our strains, it was even more amazing, right? And we were practicing with tissue culture, making moms from tissue culture or doing tissue culture after selection, all sorts of experiments. So it was really interesting at a university, it's like, it was amazing. Yeah. And then, the test results were bad. So I was like, let me see how you're curing the weed. And he was just basically taking it, putting it in the freezer And he didn't know better, and he didn't know the manicuring technique. And so then I just went in there at one of the harvests, and I taught the students, because they're students, how to manicure properly, how to cure properly.
What is your recommendation for curing?
So whatever you do, do not use a machine. I've seen a million machines to dry it faster. I'm always like, oh yeah, I could also make wine as an analogy. And in one day you can have a bottle of wine. Yeah. Or you can...
A bottle of wine.
There you go. So basically, why speed up a 10-day process? So you need not fans, no, just good ventilation, the right humidity levels, hang dry. So what we like to do is we take the big fan leaves off, cut it, hang them, old fashioned.
Yeah, that's exactly how I do it.
Then we manicure, and then we store and we burp.
Yeah, that's how I do it as well.
And then at the recreational will be big, tubs instead of jars. But if you're a home grower, you can do it in jars. But don't fuck up the last bit. You did all that work.
Yeah, it's so hard to see. My heart bleeds every time. Yeah.
The other thing is, because a lot of Germans are going to be growing outdoor for the first time, so what you're going to want to do, if you don't want the neighbors to see, you don't want to get it stolen or whatever, you can do topping. And I do a lot of bending of the plant.
Yeah, loss restraining, yeah.
Yeah, so I just like, and you'll be surprised at how strong they are. And then you make more of a hedge. And like I say, I always look at it like this, like most mistakes are made of overwatering, not underwatering, because they're worried like, oh, I'm going away or whatever, or I haven't watered them. And then you give them too much water. Well, the plants looks like this, you know what I mean? I always liken it to like working out, like.
I want them to pray.
Yeah, exactly. Pray. But it's like you'll see at the end of the day, they had a hot day, or if it's at the beginning of the day, whichever way you want to do it, then you build up, and then the roots, because good roots make good fruits, you know what I mean? So the key is your root system, and that they have to work to go get that water and nutrients. And then if you've ever seen a diagram of a tree and the root system, it's the same with the cannabis plant. And so what's down there is what's up there. And so you really, what's important is the medium you're working in and taking care of your roots. And so it is okay for them to start to go down, and then when they get fed, wow, so it's like they're working out. That's my advice for outdoor growing. The indoor growing, Julian is much more the special. So you guys can interview him as far as the fine tuning of it. I mean, I'm more of a personnel and teaching protocols and writing protocols. He's more the breeder. Yeah, so that's what I do also is I write standard operating procedures.
SOPs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then,
interesting.
And so then it's teaching. And so the difference between I was working in a Portuguese medical, which is very strict. So each country has a little bit different, and theirs is really like check a box for everything you do. I mean, I walked into the room, check a box. I did this. I put on my this. I checked this. But what happens is the plant and we are not robots. No. So although that is good because you're checking all the boxes, you also have to have a feeling for it. So when I'm writing these, I do the SOP, the box checking is important, but it's also why you're doing it, why you do this. So for example, what most growers do, that especially if they're from the agricultural background and not from cannabis, they don't have the feeling for the plant yet, is if they see a problem, they try to overcompensate. So if it's underwater, they overwater. If it's whatever it is, and they try to fix the problem in one day. And what you need to do is slowly gear towards it. Think about it like golf.
If you have a Kalmak deficiency.
If you've ever played mini golf, right? You miss the hole, and then you're going to shoot it back that way or that way. No. You got to slowly get to where you want to go. This new dispensary is going to be based on the genetics. We're going to do a pheno hunt. So we take 100 seeds, regular, of our best genetics. We have a whole vault of seeds that we don't sell to the public. Then we make a selection, we narrow it down, then we found the very best one. So the first run will select probably 8 strains. The next one, another 8, then another 8, then another 8. So we'll probably have 32 strains when we open. And like I said, we are going to really focus on the grow, and then the dispensary will be nice, and you can come, get your cannabis there. And we're going to try to give as much information. We're going to try to get it to all of the levels of medical, but for recreational. So we're going to come to Berlin first, and then we're going to work with a few people that we know. We don't want to work with everyone, you know. We just want to like, okay, we know they're a good grower, then we can work with them on a few strains. And then, so this will be an official THSeeds store in Berlin, but I always think of the grow. I don't think of the store. I'm more about the background, about growing good weed, because the way I look at it is, if you have good weed, the people come.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Have you considered doing a Pheno community hunt? Because you will have members.
Yes.
You could provide them with seeds.
Well,
and then you could do your internal cup just in the shop. Everybody comes with this Pheno. You compare.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. That's what we want to do with.
So what we can do is which that's a great idea, would be because the members are actually growing, but then the members can also buy seeds. And most people are going to grow. They're not going to do the whole Pheno hunt. They're going to do a Pheno hunt from feminized seeds. And I will tell you, we used to say you cannot do that, right? Then all of a sudden, medical in Canada right now, one of the biggest medical producers is growing French cookies from one seed, one feminized seed. The same with the French macaron. And we also had another medical in Oregon with S.A.G.E, where they just got one free seed, or they had 5 seeds, feminized. They found a good phenotype. But what could happen over time, because it's feminized, is it could degenerate. But these guys, they're doing good. But in general, the feminized, yeah, you can do a Pheno hunt, and it should last about a year. But if you really want to do breeding, you generally grow from regular seeds. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, then. Thanks a lot.
That was some good coffee this morning. Yeah. So they have all these art light exhibitions all around town, projections and things and all sorts of cool shit. There's the Blood Street there. It's got a real bad vibe. This is my luckiest. I call it karma parking. Number 2, which was the headquarters of the CIA, which stood for Cannabis in Amsterdam. What made this so unique was you'd walk up the stairs, and then when you went into the room, we had a giant grow room behind plexiglass. So as soon as you walked in, you had to, and then there was a big lounge area, and in the back side of this was a chair with a map, and that's where we did the video bong hits. And so you have Snoop Dogg, you have House of Pain, you have Be Real, Woody Harrelson, Willie Nelson, you name it, all did video bong hits here. And it was like Rob Clark called it, who wrote Marijuana Botany, called it the epicenter of the cannabis universe. And this is where we started all the first High Times Cannabis Cup was actually here, just upstairs. And one of the funniest things about this place was we'd always get someone wandering up, looked a little bit wayward, because across the street at Drogbach number 2 or 3, it has the same address almost. And it's like kind of a halfway house reform for drug criminals, kind of. So they're like coming off of drugs or whatever. So they have to go check in, and they would come here by mistake. And there's this big, but I mean, we were always like, oh, no, that's across the street. So yeah, that was the story of the CIA. And then at the end, the name wasn't so easy because of getting bank accounts and things like that. So originally we defected to the KGB, and the KGB was the Cannabis Genetic Bureau with a K. So that was kind of funny. And then we lost the place. And so we moved to where we were earlier, to the Hemp Works, and that name just made it a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but it was fun. I mean, it's one of those things you do once in your life, and everyone remembers it from the cannabis world. So that first Cannabis Cup was the year that Greenhouse won the best coffee shop. Northern Lights, right here, the other coffee shop won for weed, and Sensi Seed won all the seed companies.
And it was also a coffee shop incubation center. So we told about all the coffee shops and where the best ones were to go. And that was it.
So we're gonna take a look at history right now.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
All right, the beginning.